letters about getting in trouble, right? Like the worst letters you could ever imagine. Like, Mustafa went to jig school, Mustafa didn't study, Mustafa failed this exam, right? This is all when I was younger, much younger. And my whole life changed when I got into, I don't know if you want me to tell you. I got into a school fight in Australia, right? In Australia, we experience a lot of racism. You guys are all Muslim, right? I'm Muslim as well. In Australia, I faced a lot of prejudice for being Muslim, right? People would always call out like racial slurs. They used to say like, go back to your country, right? And as a young Muslim, I didn't feel like I belonged in Australia. And so I had these sort of conflicts growing up. I had these sort of identity issues. Who am I as a Muslim? Who am I as an Australian? And that got in the way of my studies, right? This is when I was young. I remember sitting in the principal's office when I was in year 8. You guys are what year is this? Year 10?
10, 9, 8.
10, 9, 8, right? I was sitting in the principal's office in year 8. And I was looking at the wall, and I was thinking, my mom has a master's degree in chemistry. My grandfather is a PhD in chemistry. My father's got a master's degree. And I'm thinking, if I don't change my life, well, I'm going downhill. You know what I mean? And so I was sitting there and I was thinking, why am I here? Like, the reason why I got caught in all these problems as a young kid was because I hung around the wrong crowd. And this is some advice that I give my family members in Kashmir. Am I speaking too quickly? Let me slow it down. This is some advice I was giving my family members in Kashmir, the young guys I was talking to. I was telling them, as young boys and girls, who you hang out with will determine who you will become, like when you grow older. The values you adopt will come from the circle of friends that you have, right? And so it's very important to choose your friends wisely. Because as students, you're away from the sight of your parents, right? You can choose your own friends and you can be one person with your friends and another person with your parents. And so there's a degree of independent guidance that you have to make a decision for who you want to be in the future that is outside the scope of your parents' advice. Right? Your parents can only advise you, beta, be a good boy, this, that. But when you come to school, you want to be cool. You want to hang out with the cool kids. You want to go out and smoke after school. You know what I mean? A lot of kids are like that. They're very impressionable. A lot of young kids, they don't have an idea of how to be cool. They want to copy a new hairstyle, watch a new TikTok trend, right? Do a little dance video or something. People don't know what they're doing when they're young. And I see a lot of young guys, they hang around the wrong crowds, and I was caught in that. Like, that's why I'm telling you all of this. My life was like that in the beginning. I started seeing all my friends and I started saying like, holy, I'm gonna go down the wrong path unless I made a change. And it all changed after year 8. I left all my friends and I started hanging out with the intelligent group. I started hanging out with people who were curious about life, who wanted to not just learn for the sake of learning, but who was curious about the subjects that they were learning. Right? And that influenced me, it rubbed off on me. I wasn't like that kind of person when I was young, and it changed me for when I was older. After year 8, my marks improved dramatically, and then I got into a good university in Australia. I studied applied finance, and from there I took a gap year to work in London for 2 years in startup companies, in investment banks. I came back to Australia and I started working for Microsoft. Now, Mustafa wouldn't have done all that, quite frankly, if I didn't make that change back in year 8. Right? And that's why I'm here to tell you the honest truth, because the honest truth wasn't, Mustafa wasn't some good boy growing up, right? Mustafa was very rebellious. I used to see you ever have like I'm sure one of you guys have like a sibling, like an older sister, older brother, who's doing better in grades, and your mom always like compares you? Is that true? And you feel crap about it, right? You hate hearing that. It makes you resent your family, it makes you feel distance from your parents. Indian parents, they do that. They like to compare each other like it's like a coliseum. Like gladiators fighting in a coliseum. Instead of valuing your own independence, there's a bit of that comparison. The thing about me was I wasn't really good at independent studying. Like I couldn't put my head down and study for hours. The way I did really well in school was by studying with people. Now this is what I want to talk about, effective time management and effective studying techniques. The techniques that helped me get good grades. Like I got distinctions in economics. I wasn't the kind of guy who would get distinctions in economics. I was not like a high achiever. I got that by learning what are my strengths, what are my weaknesses, and working towards my strengths. Now I'll be honest, the way your teachers may teach you may not be your strengths. The way the classical school system is set up is rote learning, which is read and memorize. The people who are good at that, they become successful. The curriculum and the education system is designed specifically to benefit certain people. That's why only recently we've been paying attention to people with ADHD and learning different disabilities and learning, right? For the longest time, it's like we've weeded those people out. You have to understand that some people learn by reading, some people learn by physical interaction, some people learn by visual stimulus. People learn from different means, right? For me personally, I wasn't that good at reading. Like I could read, but I couldn't memorize what I was reading. And so for me to learn, you know what I did? I found audiobooks of my entire textbook and I would listen to it. And my brain can memorize audio information much better than written information. And so I learned that that was my weakness and that was my strength. So I worked towards it. All the teachers, they said, oh, what are you doing? Why don't you just read? It didn't benefit me. So you got to understand what are your strengths and then work towards them. Because in the real world, once you step out of this classroom, once you leave these schools and you go to university, you're on your own. In university, no one holds your hand. You know what I mean? You're alone in your dorm and you have to study. And so you have to work out what are your strengths. And you know what's crazy? In university in Australia, a lot of the high-end achieving people in high school, they become the bottom of the class in uni. Because once they've made it into the degree, they like put their feet up and they rest, and it's like game over for them. And they are some of the lowest achieving people I've ever seen. Some of the top students in Australia's highest ranking school, North Sydney boys. You know what's crazy? I went to my class, we had an exam, and this is like 8:30 in the morning, and I've been studying for the last like 5, 6, 7 weeks for this exam. I show up, and I see this boy sitting there, 10 minutes before the exam, and he's sitting there with his cheat sheet, right? You're allocated a cheat sheet, it's got nothing on it, it's got no notes on there. I was thinking, bro, this guy's gonna flunk the class, what is he doing? So I asked him, I was like, bro, did you study for this? He's like, no. So he told me his whole life story. He said he got in the top university, University of New South Wales. It's like ranked top 10 or something in the world, right? He got into petroleum engineering at that university. And he was a high achiever. He got 99.8, which is, you can get into medicine in Australia with that, right? And he told me that that field only allocates 15% of the graduates get jobs. Because petroleum engineering, there's not many petroleum companies out there, right? If there's a high influx of graduates, not everyone gets a job. So he said, oh, I couldn't get a job out of that. And he said, like, after that, I got into drinking. I got into drugs. And my life went downhill after that. Top achieving student, right? Like I said, that motivation can die out over time, especially when you get older. You're young right now. You're like full of drive and passion. When you get older, a trend that I'm seeing with a lot of young boys is they want to make money quick. You know why? It's this new age of TikTok and Instagram, a show-off culture. They want to make money today, right? That's not how the real world works, right? And what happens is that lifestyle influences a very negative perspective on how to encourage productivity and work. People don't want to learn the long route of studying engineering to get a degree. People want to get some money quick with some quick jobs, some quick business. They get into scams. They get into all these sort of problems, right? This is a new trend that my generation shouldn't face it. the older generation, they don't know what the hell is going on. That's the truth, bro. They don't know what's on TikTok and Instagram. You guys know it, right? All of you guys know that there's a new trend, a new wave of thinking in your age group that your teachers have no clue what's going on, right? And there's a lack of communication between the students and the teachers. The teachers don't know what to teach. They're uninformed of the new age. And the students are sort of left to their own devices to guide themselves. And that's a problem, right? One of the advices we're talking about is the system of a peer-to-student mentoring that happens between the years of the 11th grade to the year 7th grade. Because the year 11s will know more about the current generation, current values, current trends, than the teachers. What's so strange is like growing up in all generations, even my mom's generation, she would probably think that teachers are too old-fashioned, they don't understand me. Right? You look at your parents and probably think they're too old-fashioned, they don't understand me. And your kids are going to look at you and think, oh, my mom's too old-fashioned. Right? Each generation, you have to adapt your teaching methods to connect with the youth. And that disconnect can cause more like disobedience. It can cause more problems like people not willing to learn because they feel like the teacher doesn't understand it. All these problems are not just, a local problem, these are universal education problems, right? So I'm going to discuss a couple of methods to improve your effective time management and studying techniques. Studying techniques that help me tremendously throughout university. And these are like peer-reviewed, educated, researched at university, effective studying techniques. So let me show you. The first technique is called the Richard Feynman technique. Richard Feynman technique, it essentially goes by, if you're able to teach a subject to someone else, it shows your level of understanding in the subject, right? So if you read something and you have a test coming up, the best thing to do, once you're well versed in that knowledge, is to teach it to your friend, right? Once you teach it, what happens is your brain opens up pathways, new pathways of understanding. The first pathway is the apple is red, right? You're just memorizing what the book says. But when you teach it, you have to recall that information in your mind, reprocess it, and then spit it back out. What that does is it shows you if there's any gaps in your knowledge, right? That's number one. You can identify if there's any holes in what you've learned. Quick and easy method is to teach it back to someone, right? The next method is called the blurting method. So when you read a paragraph or you read a page, I want you to immediately spit out everything that you can remember and recall from that page, right? Write it down quickly. Once you review what you've written down, you can see where there's gaps in that information. You can see what you're missing out on, right? And then focus on those gaps. Focus on what you're missing out on. If you just read and then memorize and then go to sleep, you don't even know what you remember or you don't remember, right? And if you just read and then write, you're just copy-pasting from the book. That doesn't improve anything. Read it, memorize it, and then spit it out on a different piece of paper while covering the textbook. That's another method. It's called the blurting method. The next one is spaced repetition. The way your brain works, I don't know if you guys have done this. Put your hand up if you studied like right before the exam and you regretted it, like you were not prepared at all. How come you guys are putting it? You guys are liars. Don't be honest. Put your hands up. Yeah? That's the only honest man in the room. You studied right before the exam, right? You forgot about the test. You just checked your notes. The test is tomorrow. The girls aren't putting their hands up. I don't know if you're honest. Right? This is called spaced repetition. If you study right before the exam, your brain doesn't have time to soak in that information. The best way to restore information is over intervals, long periods of time, right? So if you were to space out your study periods, study it a lot earlier, stop, revise the notes, study it again, revise the notes. If you space it out, your mind is more likely to retain that information, right? It's called spaced intervals. The next one is called Parkinson's law. This is a very interesting thing. If you were to ask yourself, effective is your study time, right? If you break down your entire study time, let's say you study for an hour, 2 hours after school, how effective is that study time? How much of that time is allocated, not effectively soaking in information? Like we just said, like right before the exam, that is the most efficient study time, isn't that true? When you know you're gonna fail, you are so concentrated. But when when the exam is like 6 weeks from now, you're like, yeah, what's on TV? Right? That's not that effective. That's what Parkinson's law is. It's called the 80-20 rule. 80-20 rule means that 20% of your study time actually covers 80% of the information. Right? The rest is just like garbage. It's just like filler time. That you think that you're doing something great. Oh man, look, I studied 2 hours, so you can tell your mom about it. But you know that's not like real. You know what I mean? You put that photo on Instagram. Look at me, I'm studying football. It's not real, right? We know you're on your phone most of the time. You got to see what is the most effective study time. If you're studying for 5 hours, honestly, you only realistically study for like 1 hour, and the rest is filler time. So focus on that important time. Don't just fill it in with fluff, because it's a waste of time, quite honestly. That's the Parkinson's law. Now next is second brain. So second brain is, for example, if you store notes on your phone. By the way, we have phones. Our parents didn't have phones, right? We can store notes, alarms, reminders on your phone. What that means is it frees up your mind from forcing your mind to remember things. If you think, oh, I have an appointment, your mind is storing some like temporary information in there. And so that means it's taking up a little bit of space where actual useful information could be there. Remove that, in computers, they call it RAM, random access memory. It's not the same as a hard drive, it's temporary data, right? Reminders, alarms, turn the cooking stove off. Don't remember that stuff. Get your phone to remember it, right? That actually improves memory. There have been studies been shown that such things improve memory. So rely on your phone, set up alarms, utilize the efficiency of your phones a lot more. If you have to, what I used to do for my English exam, for like creative writing, you had to like come up with a creative piece. I would write it down and I would read it out to my phone. And then I would play it back and listen to it like every single day of the week till it memorized in my head, right? Our parents didn't have the luxury of such technology. Do you know what I mean? So make sure you utilize it. It's called second brain. And then energy cycle is the last topic I want to talk about. Energy cycle means that your natural levels of energy, depending on if you're a morning person or if you like to study late in the afternoon or you like to study late at night, it's up to you, right? But there are intervals where your energy is at its peak and there's times when your energy is really low. In those times, you might think like, I don't know about you, but this is how I did it. When I was like studying for assignments, I would always like procrastinate, because you always procrastinate when you have something due. Do you notice that? You always suddenly have the urge to clean your room. You haven't cleaned your room in like months, but now you want to clean your room. Your mind wants to do these things to put off a bigger task, because it's sort of daunting, it's sort of like intimidating, right? We sort of waste our high energy points doing remedial, useless tasks. It's important to focus your high energy moments on like the high energy requirements in education, so studying. Studying, like if you think maths is really tough, if maths is challenging for you, if chemistry is really tough, focus the high energy intervals on those difficult subjects. And for easier tasks where it's like a breeze, if you think that you're like, you can kill it in biology, use your lower energy tasks for those subjects. Utilize how your body's energy flow works for difficult subjects, right? It's really important. See, these sort of things aren't taught, but what I realized, if you want to get that extra percent, the extra 5–10%, the difference between a credit and a distinction, or a distinction from a high distinction, it's a small altercation, a marginal change that can make that difference, right? So that's my final point. I'd like to thank you guys for listening. Who do I call up next?
Questions? Do you have
Any questions? Yeah, any questions?
क्वेश्चन है हिंदी में भी बोल सकते हैं बताओ किसी को पीछे वाले बहुत शोर करते हैं ना क्वेश्चन पूछो Anybody from the girls? Challenge.
Yeah, go on. Go on, ask. Ask.
Do you have a question?
Yeah, ask. It's so easy. Don't worry about us. Just ask.
I have some issues related to being constant towards my studies. I don't like really be constant. I do मतलब study constantly नहीं हो पाता है फिर वो. Any tips regarding that?
Not consistent.
Repeat the question so the people at the back can hear.
Okay, sister asked a question. She says she's having problems being consistent in her studies. I had the exact same problem. The way I solved it, look, I'll be honest. Some people are very disciplined. Like my brother is very disciplined. My dad wakes up at like 6 a.m. to go to the gym every day. I can't do that. That's not me. It's not going to happen in like 100 years. You know what I mean? Even if it's like Yom Kiyama tomorrow, I'll sleep in that day. But the truth is, the way I got consistent in studying was I told my friend, look, we're going to study Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday at this specific time. Once I had a friend involved, I felt accountable. When it was just me involved, I was like, I'm a bit hungry. When you're hungry, I want to eat. I ate, I'm tired, I want to take a bit of rest. And it's already too late. You ever do that? I'm going to study at 3 p.m. And then it's 3:01. Okay, I'll study tomorrow. You know what I mean? It's already passed. You ever do that? All the time, right? When you have a friend, you have some sort of accountability. You have to challenge each other. You challenge her, she challenges you. You missed study last week, we have to study tonight. When you have that accountability, you sort of force yourself. When you're by yourself alone, you kind of lie to yourself, right? Let's be honest. That's how it works for me. Unless you're extremely disciplined, some people are extremely disciplined. That's not me. Work to your strengths. Because I'll be honest, my mom used to always say, why can't you just be like your brother? He just gets the job done. That's not how it works. You know what I mean? Work to your strengths. I found I had to get a friend to do that. Any other questions?
Good question, this one.
That's a very good question.
How can you improve your
Interest in studies.
Okay.
Interest in studies.
Repeat the question loud. So the people at the back.
The sister asked, how can she improve her interest in studies? Right? Now I'll be honest, I'll be very honest with you. What changed my perspective on studying finance, for example, I was not the best writer in class, right? I was like an average student. But in university, I topped the class. I got 100% in my economics exam. I topped it. But I was a very average kid. The reason I got good is because I found a lot of passion in the subject. I got a lot of passion from listening to audiobooks. I got a lot of passion by listening to, for example, if you like science, Vsauce, you know Vsauce? I don't know if you guys heard of Vsauce. Like the YouTube channel, Vsauce. There's a lot of science channels out there, Minute Physics, that explains complicated concepts very simply, in a very entertaining way, that sparks your curiosity. Do you know what I'm saying? I remember in high school, I was horrible at maths. I wasn't horrible, I was very mid-tier, right? In university, I was really good at maths. You know why? Because my teacher, I always resented my teacher for this. I asked him, he told me, you're not supposed to enjoy maths. You're supposed to do it. It was a very old school mentality. And I hated it for that reason. I was I'm that kind of person, I can't just do something for the sake of it. I have to have some deep, esoteric reason for doing it. And that's when I'm motivated. The same thing for religion, for salah. If your mom just tells you to wear hijab or go and pray and this, that, read Quran, you don't even know what you're doing. You're just doing it because your mom told you to do it. Sooner or later, when your mom's not in the room, your religion goes as well. And that's a problem a lot of young people have. So you gotta have the deeper understanding of why you do things. I'll be honest, sometimes teachers inspire that, sometimes they don't. And when they don't, people lack. So you have to find that motivation yourself. Do you know what I mean? Watch it on YouTube. If you wanna get interested in writing, read up on the famous writers the old English writers and what inspired them, and go through their journey and sort of have your own personal journey with the subject. Do you get what I'm saying? Sometimes your teacher will be there to inspire you. Sometimes you have those teachers that inspire you. It makes you want to study physics or something in university. when you never had that passion, sometimes your teacher will make you hate a subject. That's true, that's always true, right? But you have to find that inspiration for yourself, for your own sake, for your own grades, right? YouTube helped me a lot. Any other questions? Yeah, bro. I didn't hear that.
Can you come here?
Come to the front, bro.
Sir, I want to know how we can detox dopamine in our brain because according to neuroscience, that is the thing which won't allow us to do the productive thing in our life. That is the thing that distract us from our goals. So, comment on this. How we can detox it.
That's a very good question.
Can you paraphrase it? Paraphrase it.
Okay, the question is, very good question, very intelligent question. Now let's go. That's a good question. What the brother asked, he said, how do we detox such a repetitive dopamine cycle in our brains, right? So most of the dopamine comes from our phones, comes from Instagram and TikTok and stuff like that, right? And I worked at Microsoft, and our whole goal there was to keep users like addicted to these apps, right? Like a heroin addict, so that they keep using these apps and these companies make trillions of dollars. This is the goal of all these companies, right? To get people hooked. They know what makes you like thirsty for these dopamine hits, right? Constant reels. There's a reason why Instagram and all that, it's only like 5 seconds. They found out that the human mind only has the attention span of like 7 seconds. Beyond that, and he wants to see something else. And so what happens is your brain is conditioned to only pay attention for 7 seconds, right? Essentially, your dopamine receptors are only active based on those 7 seconds. And what's happening in the new generation, kids are being raised by the iPad. Mom and dad are at work, and the kid is like glued to Cocomelon. You know what I mean? Cocomelon is like the mom and dad. It's so strange. And that's affecting, kids can't even eat without like YouTube. Isn't that weird? You look at your grandpa, he's just looking at the wall and thinking about like the Indian partition or something, eating chai and bread. Whereas a kid, he needs to watch like constantly, his mind needs to be like occupied. He can't even like think by himself. It's so strange, if you look at like when people are out together, even friends in a circle, they're out eating lunch, but they're all on their phones. And that's so weird. You can see couples, like married couples, they're eating together in total silence, and they're just looking at their phones. And it's so funny, they're looking at their phones, and they take a photo of their couple and holding hands together, right? And they're thinking, look how great my life is. But in reality, their life is like miserable. They're sitting there in silence, like, what kind of life is that? But everyone is collectively living in this delusion to impress other people. This is the reality that we're living in. Our parents didn't have this. My mom didn't have a tablet. She had like the tablet of Prophet Musa or something. Like a stone tablet. They didn't have these sort of things. This is a new problem. The new age of technology, the new age of smartphones specifically, is a new problem. Our dads, when they had the button phones, it wasn't a problem. How do we detox from this? You know, it's very interesting, like, even Ramadan is a detox, right? You cut back from food and dopamine. When you break your fast, you feel like you've been like wandering the desert for like 50 years, don't you? You cut down from sugar and water and everything, your mind is sort of like reset. That's a really interesting point. Like, when I grew up in year 12, I didn't have all these smartphones. Like, I had a button phone. But I'm sure you guys have smartphones, right? Do you guys have smartphones?
Yes.
Oh my God. There are applications on your phones and on your computer. Applications this is what my brother told me. My brother actually told me this to become more productive. Because I was having this problem with my computer. When I'm writing up a document, it's so easy to click YouTube and watch some like Korean drama or something like that, right? It's not very productive. So he told me this method. There's an application that says, unless I write 1,500 words, it won't let me leave the Word document. The only way to change it is I have to manually shut down the computer and start again. And so that makes me focus on finishing off at least 1,000 words, and then I can reward myself with the thing. The same way with your phone, you can set a timer where it doesn't open up any social media apps for an hour and a half. The only way to change is you have to manually shut the phone off and start it back on again. And so you're only allowed to open the calculator or something, or the alarm. And that's what helps you condition your mind to have an efficient reward system for your brain. I can only be rewarded if I write 1,000 words. That's a healthy reward mechanism. What I used to do is I'd open up my pencil case, open the book, and then I'd think, oh, I'm already getting into the study. I can reward myself now. You know what I mean? We're so quick to want to reward ourselves. At the drop of a hat, we can't do anything normally without rewarding. We're looped into that reward cycle, like brother said, right? To detox yourself, use apps to prevent other apps. You gotta keep your phone locked away. You might need to do those things. I didn't have a phone back then, but if I did, it would be hell. I would be, you know what I mean? You might need to have those extreme methods. Keep your phone, if you're with your friend, put both your phones in one bag and zip it up and hold each other accountable. It's a lot easier to hold each other accountable when you're in a group and less when you're by yourself. You know what I mean? It's a lot harder to do it when you're by yourself. That's why I recommend group study, but it's up to you. Did that answer the question, bro? Is there any other questions coming?
Is it okay to be goal-oriented? Likewise, in our education system, we are just educated to be goal-oriented instead of trying to get a system.
Would you come to the front?
Come here again, come here again.
Is it okay to be goal-oriented? Because in today's life, the lack of education system in India, which is taught that you should be goal-oriented instead of trying to build a system which will help us to be, going in an automatic thing of that sort of thing.
What do you mean automatic? What does that mean? Goal-oriented versus what's the alternative?
Trying to build habits. Yes, as James Clear he said that we don't rise to the level of our goals, we just fall to the level of our system. Atomic. James Clear.
Atomic habits. Is it better to be goal-oriented?
I think so. That's a profit in Buddhist mind that should be goal-oriented instead of trying to build a system, which James Clear said instead of trying to build a good habit. And it is very difficult to build a good habit. Instead, you continue with a bad habit. That's it.
That's a hard one.
Okay to be a goal oriented or we should do something else, some other things in life, sir. But sir, how can we change the mentality of those parents whose mentality is that our child is nothing without education, or he can do nothing without the books? Or sir, I can say that if I am a passionate for football or any other game or something other, but my parent is not allowing me for these things. His mentality is that if he didn't study, if he didn't go to school, he can do nothing in life. So please give your thoughts.
That's a good question. Okay.
Repeat the
That's a very good question. Brother asked a really good question. He said, in India, people are valued by their academic score, right? They're very, extremely hell-bent on their value is what they can get in their marks, right? And what's interesting is in Australia, the system is very different. It's very, very, very different. I remember my friend, he's an islander person, off the islands next to Australia, right? He got a scholarship to study physics, and his parents didn't want him to study at university. His parents wanted him to become a rugby player. And I was thinking, wow, that's the complete opposite of what we're taught in our system. It's a complete flip opposite. And what's different is in our culture, we value academics, right? Now the thing is, in Australia, in America, in the UK, Indians and Chinese people are the highest income earners. Significantly higher income earners because they value education. What I was telling all my cousins here, I was telling them in Australia, nobody studies engineering except Indians and Chinese people. Nobody. Like white people, they're not interested in studying engineering because they don't find a passion in it, right? It's very hard to find a passion in like physics and chemistry. Chemistry is so dry, my mom studied chemistry. It's like a miracle how she found passion in it, right? A lot of white people don't do that. You know what's interesting? A lot of our people, Indian people and Chinese people specifically, they do things for the sake of like society. Society needs to build a bridge, and therefore we need engineers to build it. Whereas white people, they do it for like, you know, I'm really into baking or something like that. They don't do it for like a greater purpose reason. What brother asked was like, how do we convince our parents to not value education so much? I'll be quite honest with you. I'll be really, really honest with you. My job at Microsoft, right? The people at my job who are senior managers, a lot of these guys didn't go to university. This shocked me, right? These guys are very high earners. They're earning something like, maybe something like 30 crore, maybe more, right? A year. They're earning really high. And these guys, they dropped out of high school. This is a very strange concept, right? But they dropped out because they're my parents' age. Back then, you didn't need a degree. If you got experience, business experience, you can work in a big bank or whatever like that. Nowadays, it doesn't work like that. Nowadays, the absolute lowest entry job requires education, requires a degree. And I'll be honest with you, the competitive nature in the real world, to get into jobs like Microsoft and Google and this that, you need to get a degree just to put your foot in the door. Because everyone has a degree and the world is becoming more and more saturated. And everyone is becoming learned because you can learn coding on YouTube, right? So if you don't have absolutely anything, to get into those opportunities is extremely tough, in my honest opinion. The truth is, I would recommend to your parents to encourage you to study in a field that is your passion. I have a lot of family members, they studied like civil engineering, computer engineering, this engineering, that, medicine, that, this, that, and they all dropped out because they didn't have passion for it. And the mom wanted them to do it. We live in a world where we don't need to do that anymore. We can get a comfortable job, a comfortable living, a good education without hating your life for what you do in your work. The truth is, like, this is your life, right? This is your goddamn life. At the end of the day, your mom is not holding your hand into the work when you go to work. You have to suffer from the consequence of what your parents suggested. If it's good, it works. If it's not that great, you kind of suffer. The same thing with marriage, to be quite honest with you. I'm like coming from Australia, and I'm seeing how it is in Kashmir in India, and people are like a little bit happy, a little bit miserable. I gotta be honest, you're the one who suffers at the end of the day. If your parents or your uncle wants you to marry someone and you're not happy with it, they're not there in the relationship with you. They're sitting from a distance giving that suggestion. You're the one who has to suffer. And sometimes the fight is worth it. To be quite honest with you, sometimes the fight is worth it. For your own dignity, for your own mental sanity, for your own peace. We live in a generation where mental health is valued, right? It wasn't valued like decades ago. You know how people solve mental health problems? Back in the day, they just like hung themselves on the fan. That's the truth. We don't want to live in that generation anymore. We want to voice our opinions, right? We don't want to suffer in silence. Oh, what will my mom say? I'm going to disappoint my mom. It's your own damn life, right? You got to take a stance. Do you want to live miserably or you want to live with a bit of dignity? That's the truth. Take it from someone from Australia where people, they put their foot down a little bit. Yeah, that's a good question. Mostly in Kashmir, the students are just supposed to attend lectures and go to school, and they're not getting the freedom of being creative to think beyond the limits. That's very, you know, so, I had that same problem in Australia. It's a bit like that as well. Even in university, I thought university was amazing. It's only until I did private courses, like the Chartered Financial Analyst course, like senior courses at Cambridge and Harvard, they offer them online. It's only when I did those courses that I realized how worthless school education and university education is. The university education, I went to a pretty decent university in Australia. It's like top 50 in the world, right? Even that was not that great. All the lectures were recycled. All the past papers, they recycled it. They made it in 1950s or something like that. And they've been recycling the same old content every year. It's kind of garbage. And they kind of pump out money from students. They churn out money. That's how universities and schools work. Unfortunately, that's the truth, right? It was only until I did private courses that I realized the way they've set up exams in very senior courses, they challenge your intellect, they challenge your creativity and how you answer these questions. For the schools to get to that level is a big jump, quite frankly. It is a big jump. It's very hard to get there. It's very hard to ask that from your teachers. You need like Oxford professors to generate those sort of creative answers. Just because you might think Kashmir is a bit back, Australia is even further back. A lot of these countries are not there yet. Even universities are quite far back when it comes to creating like creativity. It's a very like avant-garde, it's a very like modern take that young people want to express creativity instead of rote learning, right? It's a far way away. In my honest opinion, if you want to express creativity, learn it in your own time. Be passionate in a subject in your own time. You might have to wait another 10 decades for your school's education system to catch up to that. And it's not a Kashmir-related issue. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
I did form a question, but I would some thoughts from my mind, but I don't express everyone. I just want to should I be isolated from the people that make contact with others? I think it push me very thought. I have huge amount of thought in my head, but I can't express with anyone. That can make me sometimes depressed.
That's a very good question. What brother said. He said he has a lot of thoughts in his mind, right? A lot of emotions, a lot of feelings, a lot of perspectives, but he's finding it very difficult to express it. That's exactly like me, to be honest. I'm exactly like that. You see, not everyone can understand you, and not everyone will value your problems in life. Sometimes you may have parents that will understand you, sometimes you will have family members that won't. Oh, beta, you are depressed. Read them out. They say that, like, what is that going to do? Do you know what I mean? Like I said, mental health is not valued. It's only valued in this generation. Right? And sometimes your pillow has to be your therapist at times. You know what I mean? That's reality. What I would recommend, honestly, what I would recommend is you need to have a true friend. This is a hadith. The hadith says, what a loss is the person who doesn't have a true friend. Because the bare minimum in life is a true friend. You can be homeless on the street, but if you have a true friend, sometimes you have everything. You know what I mean? And a true friend, you should be able to talk your mind freely, not just to impress them with your cars and your phone and stuff like that. I see a lot of young guys, their friendship and their friend circles are defined by like their very vain things, like their phone. Oh, look, my dad drives his car. And bro, that's not a friend. Those friends are not there when you're in difficult times. That's the truth. Do you know what I mean? You should define your friends like your true friends. When you're in a difficult time, when the whole school is against you, who stays with you? That's a real friend. Everyone else, bro, they blend into the background. That's the truth. When you're young, your friends is like, oh, he plays cricket. He's my friend. That's what the quality of friendship is when you're young in high school. When you're older, you don't have time for that anymore. You see the true colors in people. A person who understands the true nature of people, he typically likes to reside in his own company, or the company of honest, true people. This is a learning curve in your life. I learned this when I was later, like around your age. I learned what a true friend is, and I kind of preferred my own company or a true friend's company. So I would recommend, bro, if you have feelings inside, if you have perspectives and thoughts that you just want to let out, but you're having trouble letting it out, talk to a person that will value you. Do not talk to people who won't value you or don't seek to help you. That's the honest truth. There's a hadith, it's one of the most beautiful hadith. He says, the most ignorant person in a whole community is one that, when someone flatters him, he thinks that person is my friend. Right? He flatters him in his company. Typically, when someone just flatters you, it's not someone who protects you in your absence. Right? He typically talks a bit of smack about you behind your back. The hadith says, the person who gives you advice in private, hey, by the way, I don't think you should have said that. That was a bit rude. He's saying that because he values you. He wants to see you improve. That's a true friend. The one who flatters you, he talks smack behind your back. The one who gives you advice in private, he protects your dignity behind your back. This is the hadith. It's very important. Because I know when young guys especially, they want friends who just boost their ego. That's the truth, bro. I'm a guy as well, I've been through that. You want a guy friend, you want to hang out, you want to be cool, this, that. Those aren't necessarily true friends. A lot of men, this is the truth, a lot of men have trouble expressing emotion because they feel embarrassed to talk to their own friends about this kind of thing. Girls are much more comfortable expressing emotion, sadness, depression, and all that kind of stuff. Guys, they just suffer in silence. You ever wonder why, look at statistics, suicide rates, it's like 4 times higher in men than women. You think women are more emotional, they're more victims. It's because women express it. They get it off their chest. Men suffer in silence. They let it build up for 50 years and then jump off a bridge. It's not right. And with our generation, we're making a stand to value mental health, to talk about it. In the West, they call it Are You OK Day. Right? It's where you express what kind of trauma, what kind of struggles you have with family, with not feeling good enough in terms of education. The highest rates of suicide in the developed world is Korea and Japan. You might think like, oh, India is going through poverty and this, that. That's why they have. Korea and Japan are very advanced countries, and they have extremely high rates of suicide in the developed world. Why? It's because there's high expectations, number one. Number two, very conservative families, you can't talk about emotion with your parents. And a lot of parents are emotionally closed off, right? And that teaches the kid to like, oh, I can't express how I feel. Because my mother, she suffered from the hands of her mother-in-law. If I express how I feel, then that's putting the burden on her. This is how our culture lives. We keep repressing trauma and pass it on to the next generation. We don't actually solve it, right? I'm telling you right now, you have a huge responsibility. You might not be taught this, but you have a huge responsibility to break that generational trauma for your own kids. You have that responsibility on you. So like brother said, find a true friend to talk to. And the best advice I would say is find a husband or a wife that you can express emotion and talk to about. Don't just find like a lot of people find trophy wives. That's the truth. A pretty wife or a good-looking husband that they can hold their hand and they can impress their friends in the community. Bro, what is that? Your partner is like a life companion. You should be able to express everything in your mind to them, and they should be there for you. Yeah, they should be like a true friend, where their company is like a blessing. Those are the kind of values we should be looking for in a partner. Any more questions? Very good question. Sister asked, how do you change? A round of applause for the sister. She said, how do you change your friend circle? Oh, this is a very good question. Because I wasn't very good in studies, what made me change, right? Now your friend circle, your whole life has been given, it's sort of like the reason why you live, right? If you're without your friends, are you two best friends? Best friends?
Yes.
Right? If your best friend is sick, it's like the day is like ruined for you. You don't even want to come to school, right? Your whole value system is based on your friend circle because they give you validity. They make you feel heard. They They make you feel like you have worth in life, right? When you're around people who don't understand you, you're like a stranger in the gospel. You know what I mean? So when you understand, like, what happens is, one of the hadith of the Holy Prophet is that the Holy Prophet says, that man follows the creed of his tribe. He's more likely to take on the values of his current friend, regardless of what those values are. Because you'll feel like, that's why you ever see, like, in Africa, like, why do people walk around like naked? Like, don't they feel like shame? When everyone else does it, you don't question it. You're sucked already into the system of values of the group, right? So you have to be able to take a step back and evaluate your friend circle. You genuinely have to do that. You have to see, like, is my friend leading me in the wrong direction? It's very hard for boys and girls, especially for guys, because their friends, I remember, like, most of my guy friends, quite honestly, like, I wouldn't hang out with them anymore. The conversations are quite boring. They don't value, like, interesting talk. It's all about, like, cricket, or like some new car that came out, or some celebrity. It's very vain, shallow talk, right? For me to change my life around, I had to re-evaluate my whole friends. I had to leave those guys behind, quite honestly. And a lot of people are like that. To find a real, true friend in this world is very hard, very rare. In my opinion, is one of the most valuable investments in life, a true friend. There's three types of friends out there. This is a hadith from the Holy Prophet. The Holy Prophet says the three types of friends. One, he's like food. This is the wise friend. They aid you in your life. They give you good life advice. They're there for you when you need them. Food, you need it every single day. Right? Those friends you keep close. The second one, the Holy Prophet says, is like medicine. You need it when you need it. You don't just eat Panadol every day. Paracetamol. Right? This friend is sort of like the hadith says, tactile friend, tactile. When you need to move a couch, when you need to ask for a trip to the city, Srinagar. You don't need those. Some friends are good people, they're honest people, trustworthy people. But their company is not that beneficial for you, quite honestly. Sometimes the talk is a bit garbage, not valuable. That's the truth. They're good people, they're not bad people. But they're not good to be around them all the time. Those people are like medicine. The last one, the Holy Prophet says, is like poison, and that's the fool. The company of the fool is a torment on the soul. And the friend of a fool is always weary. He's always like tired, either from the talk, the garbage talk, or the fool will put the friend in like a harmful situation. The fool is never good. Whatever value the fool has, whether it's like gossiping, whether it's like vain talk, whether it's like abusive talk, the fool is never a good company. It's like poison. The longer you stay with them, the worse you become. Those are the three friends. And it's important when you're young at this age to value quality friends, because it will take you in a trajectory of where you're in life. Especially religion as well. It's not just education. What I've realized in Kashmir, many Muslim countries, if you're rich, if you have money, you can afford to not care too much about religion. This is a lesson my brother told me. People, when they have money, the community just looks at them as successful. And they forget, like, sometimes a poor man who's got a lot of iman, a lot of religious belief, is at a high rank in the eyes of God. That's the truth. And that's a good value to hold. Some people, they want to just associate with wealthy people. That's cheap. That's not a good trait to have. Like, this is Baramulla. Baramulla, I've been to Srinagar. Baramulla is way better than Srinagar. I gotta be honest, right? Baramulla is way better than Srinagar. That's the truth. The truth is, you guys have down-to-earth, genuine value. That's what distinguishes. In Srinagar, people are vain. You know what I mean? They want to be very modern. They only care about, they value a person by their wallet. That's the truth. That's cheap, very cheap. When I was in Baramulla, all they could talk about is like flashy cars or something like that. It made me sick. That's why we came back to Baramulla. It's Srinagar, sorry. It made me sick. Baramulla is a very soulful place. It was a good value, honestly, good value.
Very much thankful to our guests who have come from very far to Australia. It was actually a mere interaction between many things like the child psychology and your interest how students study. Also, I think it was a lecture between the enterprise first off, and initially the sir told us that how much trouble simply is in the Australia as a Muslim. And then and we are very much thankful to our guests, and we want them again here to inspire our students in the institution. Thank you very much. Let you go to respected class in lines.